a different group. And you get to spend 1,000 hours in the classroom with them, those of you that are classroom teachers, and you can touch and change their lives. If a student leaves you after 1,000 hours and you get through the book, but you don't get through to them that there's something special that they can read, that you're going to stick with them until they can read, that they can find their trophy case, if you don't get through to them, maybe nobody else will. There's kids in your classroom that are on the verge of quitting. They're on the verge of having sex for the first time Friday night because he's the only one that's ever said, I love you. He's on the verge next Tuesday of doing something with his friend because his friend has control over him, and you've noticed something going on, but you haven't stated it. You are the difference makers, ladies and gentlemen. The single most important thing for success this year, the single most important thing for success in the classroom this year is your attitude and your outlook, period. I'll be able to tell, just after my short time, who the most effective teachers are because you are the single best listeners. You are pulling for me. You pull for me with your eyes. You pull for me with your body language. That's just the kind of person you are. And you're pulling for everybody when you're with them. You can be with a kid in the hallway. You're pulling for them. You can be in the classroom, and your body language and your eye contact clearly says, I can teach all of you, and you can all learn. How many of you believe you can teach every single student in your classroom? Raise your hands. How many of you had college professors, and the first thing they said, this is a tough class, I want you all to know something. Half of you will flunk. Raise your hands. That means simply that she wasn't smart enough to teach every person in there. Ladies and gentlemen, don't look at your success by the 6 smartest kids in your classroom that are getting all A's. They're going to probably get all A's no matter who's there. Your success has to do with who can ask a question, who can be themselves. Some of you got your job 30 years ago, some 15. I know how you got your job, and I wasn't even there. It was either with a building principal or with a superintendent, whoever you talked to. It went like this. It wasn't a real long talk. You basically said something like this, with enthusiasm. I got these skills. I got these talents. Oh, I just want to touch some kids' lives. Let me help the kids. Just give me a chance to teach these kids. That's how you got your job. Now listen, you're not saying anything different. We're just talking about the attitude today. It's 15, 20 years later. You're saying the same thing. It's just the attitude. Yeah, where's those kids? Let me at them. Come on, bring them in. I'm ready this year. I'm so glad I did, ladies and gentlemen. It was my finest moment. I don't have many fine moments as far as my kids go, as far as like when they're in trouble. You know, I'm smooth when they're sleeping. I'm going to write another parent book. Who'd like to help me with maybe a contributing chapter? It's going to be called, I'd Be a Perfect Parent If It Wasn't for My Kids. Anybody want to help? Guess what? It's only the troubled times with my kids that I've grown and changed. Number 2, give up the right to possess your children. We don't own them. They're on loan. A teacher the other day gave me a beautiful sentence. She said, Our students are a gift we give to the world in a time we will not see. And that's what we're giving is the world a gift that we won't see. And that's what our students are. The 7 needs of every student. Number 1, to be loved. They need to be loved. You know how kids spell love? T-I-M-E. You spend time with them, they know you love them. You know what wait time is? We will wait for a pretty student. We will wait for a smart student, the studies show. We will, on the average, wait for girls 5 to 7 seconds for an answer. Boys, up to 2. When they're not dressed right, they don't smell right, don't have good hygiene, if we're pretty sure that they're not interested in our class, we won't even ask them. How many of you have troublemakers? Don't raise your hands. There's no such thing as a troublemaker. There's kids having trouble making it, but no such thing as a troublemaker. And the moment you think you have a troublemaker and that person is labeled as the troublemaker, you've lost focus of who they can become. And you're staring at who they are. On bullying, we don't call them the bully. We call them the person bullying. Because they're just the person bullying that day. They're not a bully. We don't want them to ever consider themselves a bully. They're just bullying that day. And by the way, you want to wipe out bullying in your schools? There's three groups every time there's a bullying situation. There's the bully, the bullied, and the bystanders. You teach the bystanders. We're always going to have bullies, kids that are having a bad day, passing on their pain. We're always going to have kids that seem weak in front of those kids. Here's what you teach is the bystanders. Teach the rest of your class to go to that kid, the three that are there. We don't do that. Remember, our little motto is, everybody matters, every decision counts. Please don't bully. Now, that will not work usually. But this does, if that doesn't. Don't do that. Remember, everybody matters, every decision counts. By the way, why don't you come and play with us? If that doesn't work, this does. We're going to tell if you do it again. It wipes it out, ladies and gentlemen. You know how many students have known about every school shooting and every school shooting in the last 20 years? But we haven't been approachable.